Welcome to episode 10 of the podcast here with Magnetic North Advisors. I am Jason Priebe.
I'm Austin Boniface.
And I'm Mike Challe.
And episode 10, we are officially halfway, or we're officially at the average of a podcast life.
Yeah, I guess. That's what they say.
The average podcast, last 10 episodes. So hopefully see us around in
is this
a
our
little
last,
bit longer.
Is this our last episode? Do you have
Is it
something
over?
to share?
Hope not.
Don't frown because it's over.
Actually,
because it happened.
Actually, I do have something to share.
What?
Uh-oh.
I already know this is going to be extremely negative towards me, so take it with a grain of salt, please. What?
Turn blinkers on cars. They are not optional.
Car signals, you mean? Turn signals?
Turn signals, sure.
Also known as a blinker?
As a blinker. Yeah, we'll get it right. I'm just so up in arms about this. Mike doesn't use his blinker.
I use it as a courtesy sometimes. The conversation did not go my way.
On average, how often do you get honked at?
Not that much. I'm a very alert.
How long has it been?
I'm a very alert.
Couple
driver.
days. Did you make it to the office today without getting honked at?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're important. Everyone use your blinker.
This came up because Mike needed to get his Minnesota driver's license a while back, and he had the good on us here in Minnesota. We make those Wisconsinites take exams over here because
Wisconsin doesn't make Minnesota do that.
Well, that's because we're
accepting
smarter.
Of everyone. You know.
Well, we do know that Mike actually had to study for this the night before to make sure he passed.
Shout out Quizlet. And I passed first time.
Apparently, the question on
just close the book
turn
on
signals
that.
was not pass. There. You did pass.
I did pass.
Barely.
You need to get an 80. And I think I would have got 100. The test just turns off after you've guaranteed yourself the minimum score.
So we don't know.
So I had questions to give.
At least the question didn't come up on turn signals. So anyways, I guess I won't call out your car, but if you see him driving around and he's not using a turn signal.
Wisconsin plates still.
He's learning. He's learning.
Yeah. Just give me a nice wave and I'll hit you with an I'm sorry.
Let me guess. You recline your seat in an airplane.
No.
All right.
That's rude.
That is rude.
Just boards before everybody else.
Yep.
Everyone else.
I'm sleeping by the time we take off. It's just like this straight jacket.
Yeah. All right, a little bit more serious topic, but I have to joke about this because it really feels like it's hitting home here. Really feels personal here. I have to bring this up because honestly, it's just one of those things that just comes out in the news, and you're just kind of like, as somebody in the industry, I think we all just kind of read this and we're like, how in the world does this even happen? This couple won the Powerball, $180 million. I think after tax they had $60-70 million, and started working with an advisor. And I mean, it should have just seemed like things weren't right from the beginning. Was utilizing annuities for all of their financial and charitable endeavors, and none of it just made any sense.
The firm flew them in on their private jet.
Yeah.
That's
wow. That's
you hear
really
that private
loud.
jet in the background?
The jet is landing on the roof right now.
That must be mine. I gotta go, guys.
Flew them in on their private jet. Anyways, just lots of red flags. Anytime you're being sold high commission products that are locking you up for years and years and years to come, ask lots and lots of questions, especially when it's all of a sudden it sounded like the majority of the assets, which just doesn't make any sense.
And if you
high fees, long lockup periods are red flags. Make sure you're getting a second opinion if you're locking up the vast majority of your assets that way. Anyways, we can touch on that a little bit more. The reason it hits home, the advisor is here from Minnesota. His last name is Priebe. First name starts with a J. It really sounds all too similar to me.
Would you like to go on the record and say you are not him?
I would like to go on the record that not only am I not him, I don't know him, and we are not related.
We're going to clip that and use it.
We are not actually
extremely
related.
out of context. I am not him.
I am not him. But yeah, it was just one of those articles you read, and somebody in the industry, I think we just read this and just we just shake our heads and are like, how does this even get through? I'm happy to know that our compliance would have raised so many red flags on that, whether it's our firm's compliance or LPL's and their compliance on that side of it. It's just,
I don't think any of us would ever do anything like that. And I look at how we use annuities and insurance products. It's usually to fill an income gap. It's not to maximize a commission.
Right. It's a
tool, not the toolbox.
That's the purpose of insurance products, is to fill an income gap or give some sort of protection for some specific reason, not to go, well, this is the vehicle we're going to use to invest all of our money. They're not investment vehicles per se. They're protection vehicles. And so, but it does lead into protecting yourself and financial health. I think
and
we got a lot of
getting a second opinion is the biggest.
Yeah.
Like if you win money that you obviously aren't expecting, if you inherit a large sum of money, don't just take someone at their
anytime you have a large liquidity event,
exactly.
Breathe, go slow. Don't throw it all into one product. Take your time.
And I know we've given second opinions before and looked at a client's situation. They're working with somebody else. And I know I personally love getting a client in here that wants to, or a prospect in here that wants us to look at their situation. You look at it and you're like, they've really done a good job. Like if you have an issue because you don't get along, you're not compatible on a personal level, then sure, I'll work with you, but don't think you're going to come to us and we've got a magic pill that's going to make it different than what he's doing, because or she. I mean, a lot of times you get that, and you're just, it feels really good to see that kind of stuff, and I hope that other advisors have looked at our stuff out there and said the same thing.
Yeah, I feel that way. Karma, right? I've had clients come in for second opinions and say, you know what, they're doing just fine. Like, I don't want to throw stones at something that isn't broken, because I wouldn't want stones thrown at my portfolios or my financial plans. It's an interesting exercise, though, for us, because it makes us think, I wonder, I'll look at give a second opinion and look at what's going on over there, and I'll try to find, stones to throw at it. And it's self-reflection on where could I improve on my portfolios and whatnot.
Right. Yeah. I think knee-jerk reaction anytime we hear a prospect coming in and they're like, oh, we're gonna look at somebody else. From a business standpoint, we're like, oh shoot, it's not locked up. I wonder, what to find out. But at the same time, a lot of times, those clients that do go look and research and meet with other advisors, they're like your best clients coming in, because they know the difference between what we're doing and what we're seeing out there. And or even if they see somebody else, but maybe they're more compatible with, Mike's personality, not mine, I'm not going to give myself that much credit, or Austin's, and they want to work with us because of the personality. At least we're sitting there going, hey, kudos to us. We know we're hitting the things that we should be doing. And you should double check when you're just starting to work with somebody. You should be meeting with multiple advisors, if for nothing else, to just hear and learn what else is out there and see that there might be differences, because there are differences, and differences aren't wrong.
No, a lot of different ways to do this business, and none of them are inherently wrong, unless.
Hold on, this one might be wrong.
Yeah.
93% of the nonprofits total assets into VAs.
Yeah. Okay, so there is reasons, but
what's crazy is I don't know. I can't really think of a situation in which I would use I would use an annuity for a charitable foundation.
charitable lead annuity trust is the only one.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
But annuities in the name of that type of trust, so you think there would be an annuity associated with it. There's just not a lot of reasons to place a VA inside inside of a foundation.
I never thought about this. Whose life did they put it on?
Right.
Never thought about that.
Right.
Anyways, that's kind of along bad actors.
Horizontal wealth transfer.
Yeah.
One of the reasons it's even if you're comfortable working with your finances, a lot of times we see one spouse take most of the control of the money, and sometimes they don't need an advisor. They got things under control. They know what they're doing, but their spouse doesn't. We are about to hit the largest horizontal wealth transfer ever. We're already seeing it start to happen. Baby boomers are getting older. They're passing away. I think since women tend to live longer, it's women are set to inherit trillions and trillions of dollars. Finding an advisor and somebody you trust to just act as a shield towards bad advice now is important, especially as you age. Dementia starts to kick in and things like that, and it becomes easier and easier to get taken advantage of by, this Priebe guy. Not this Priebe guy, but the other one.
Yeah. A lot of times with this older generation, it is the guy that's controlling the finances, and it's twofold. It's one, they're great at doing it until their health starts to go. And then what we see is the couple gets stuck in this situation where the wife doesn't want to take it over.
Well, and doesn't
because they don't want
know how to take it over.
Right, they don't know how. It's overwhelming, and they don't want to offend their spouse.
Yeah. And
so then you have a number of years that go by where nothing gets done or doesn't get done right, or RMDs start to get missed because nobody's remembering it, and you have these a handful of years that you lose a lot of potential things that could be that could go wrong. And then you have the next step of it where that person passes away. And again, the widow now has no idea what to do, doesn't know where to start. And it's a very overwhelming time, because if you do come to an advisor like us, we need so much more information than we otherwise would need for that situation. And so getting in and starting to work with an advisor, even if you do it on your own, I think we're seeing a lot of people do that, and really recommend it. Just, I get it, you could do it on your own, but you've got to realize that at some point you're not going to be able to, and that's what you're hiring for them for ahead of time.
Do your estate planning. Get your estate planning done. Don't just see an attorney to get your estate planning done. Do your estate planning with a financial advisor who has lived through clients passing away and has hands-on experience with how assets transfer and the practicality of it. An attorney can whip you up documents and put transfer on death deeds on things, but
create you a trust if you never move assets into
right. And that's a great opportunity for both spouses to sit down and to see full picture what they have, where the assets are, making sure husband and wife have logins to their bank accounts, can get the money. You don't want everything to freeze when one spouse dies because you can't log in. Powers of attorney, all that stuff.
The power of attorney, I think, is a really big one. I think we see a lot where you go to the attorney and the attorney's going to be like, okay, power of attorney is going to be each other, and then if one of them isn't there, then it'll go to their kids. But once you start getting up there in age, you need a child to be active right away, because otherwise you're going back to the attorney when something happens to your spouse.
And don't surprise the whatever child you choose with that decision, right?
Yeah.
Let them know
that
they are the successor power.
Yeah, it's a rule of ours. If you have a trustee or a trustee of your child, a trustee or a power of attorney, that we need to meet them, have a conversation with them.
You don't
again,
want
goes in that generational planning. You don't want them to get thrown into this mess and they don't know where anything is. That's just as bad as your spouse.
you
not
don't
knowing
want
where
your
anything
first
is.
phone call to them to be
Correct. Another note on power of attorneys that I seem to deal with more and more now is they end at death. Remember, a power of attorney ends at death. We had a client pass away. She was sister of a client, actually. And she had a tax refund coming to her. The tax refund was signed by her power of attorney after the client had passed away. The IRS is sitting on $13,000 that they won't pay to the bank account because the power of attorney ended on death, and that needs to go to an estate account, which it's not that big of a deal, but opening an account in the estate's name and going through all this work when something could have, been avoided with this case probably couldn't have been avoided very easily, filing your taxes on time. But so little things like that to pay attention to.
Yep.
And other planning items with spouses, take advantage of the married filing jointly tax brackets if you have big IRA balances.
Yes.
I can think of many cases where, husband passes away and wife is left with all this IRA assets. Her income hasn't gone up. She's still taking the same amount of distributions. But now all of a sudden her tax bill's way higher. Her Medicare premiums are way higher, and she doesn't understand why. Well, you're paying taxes at the single rate now. So if you're going to do Roth conversions, prioritize them when you're married. Mm-hmm. Use those widow status rules to bulk some income in, whether it's through IRA distributions or Roth conversions. Super overlooked.
The best decade for planning has got to be 60s, when people are in their 60s, right?
Yeah.
And I don't mean I mean actionable items that we're able to do and strategize for tax planning. It's before RMDs start. It's usually after you've retired, and we have so much flexibility as to what we can do with tax brackets. That being said, in order to be able to really do any of those things, you need to have started to strategize and structured your assets.
The best time to build the base, probably in your 30s.
Yes.
You get a good solid foundation built in your 30s. That makes the planning in the 60s a lot easier and a lot more beneficial for you.
and a lot more fun.
A lot more flexibility too.
You already have the Roth set up. You already have different accounts. We can plan distributions efficiently.
And I mean, we're talking big changes and big strategies. I mean, there's usually room to move a lot of money around within tax brackets in your 60s yet. It's really fun, but it requires a lot of planning, but it can really set up generational wealth.
And if you come to us at 62 and say, I want to retire next year, I have $1.2 million in a pre-tax 401k, and I have $50,000 in cash. I have 2 years left on my mortgage. What do I do? We'll be able to do small little tweaks to help you. But if you would have came to us 5 years before, 6 years before, we could start helping you, tax build structure. So now these 60s where we're going to be moving money around is already kind of done, right? We have buckets that are already made. We're not pouring into an empty bucket.
Right.
One last thing on horizontal wealth transfer that I just want to make sure everyone gets is I've seen it too often. Too late comes too soon. You always think, I'll worry about that later, and then next thing you know, you have a terminal illness, and the last thing you want to think about is your estate, your money. You want to enjoy the last years of your life. Too late comes too soon all the time. You don't want to spend the last years with your family throwing together estate plans and worrying about your financial affairs. Get them sorted out now.
Right. Yep. Spot on.
Speaking of, wealth transfer, I met with a client I thought would be interesting to share. Not a client, a prospect. Inherited some money from his grandma and wanted to talk. Does he need an advisor? Yes or no? A couple things about him. He's a young kid, mid-30s. Honestly, I told him you probably don't. You probably don't need to hire an advisor because he did most of the right things. He took a distribution of his inherited IRA. He's using a chunk of the money to buy a new house, buying a house in cash instead of using rates, financing it with high mortgage rates, which is fine. Mm-hmm. And he put the rest into a diversified fund of index funds for the non-qualified money. He's contributing to his 401k. He's doing a Roth IRA. So again, when it comes to asking for that second opinion, remember sometimes we're going to be honest with you. You might not need to pay us. We might not be worth what we charge.
And a lot of times, it's not that we don't want you around or we never want to hear from you again. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest takeaway there is, there are a lot of people that are younger, and their prime role right now is to save. And so as long as we make sure they're saving in the right buckets, there's not a lot to do. It's on autopilot for quite a while. I think the biggest thing we do is kind of give them a list of things to think about when you need to talk to us next to make sure you don't miss something, right? If there's a big event coming up, you're going to get married, you're going to have a wedding, you're going to buy a house or kids or all those types of things, reach back out to us. And we might still just say, hey, do X, Y, or Z, and you're good to go. But
the flip side of the client, of what Austin said, and the client he's talking about and referenced, or the prospect, is we have seen people who come in and say, what do you think about doing it yourself? And you look at their statements and they're making wholesale changes in and out of individual stocks. That's not a winning strategy.
Yeah.
Right.
They're not doing buy and hold portfolios. They're buying individual names that they saw on a Reddit post.
Right.
I think I'm going to learn how to trade options.
They become a biotech investor.
Yeah.
Yes. And so that's where, there either needs to be a lot more education, or, hey, we'll be the guide rails for you. You give us, we'll help manage 80% of it, and here's your bucket of money that you can mess around with. You can go gamble with. You can decide what stocks you want to do, and it won't hurt your long-term plan. Right.
Position sizing is everything.
Yes. Because it's fun. Let's be real. It's fun to especially
losing money is fun.
No, it's fun to put. It's fun to say, hey, this company I really like. I wanna put a little bit of money on it. I wanna say, hey, I think they're gonna do good.
Yeah, well, that's a different conversation than I want to put 90% of my net worth.
That's a much different conversation.
Right.
For sure.
And when it comes to reaching back out to us, a lot of the things we can help you with are really quick, easy phone calls for us.
Yeah.
My wife's pregnant. We're expecting. What should I consider doing? Maybe consider moving off of your high deductible health plan to a lower deductible health plan. And you lose your HSA, but you're going to have a lot of medical expenses. It's things like, do you want to consider setting up a college fund? Is that something you have the cash flow for? Is that something that's worth it? What are the pros and cons of that?
Term life insurance.
Yeah, term life insurance. How much do you need? You probably don't need to go buy that expensive IUL that somebody's shoving down your throat and pitching you. And just using us as a source for a second opinion. I mean, that's one of my favorite parts of my job, is when I get to talk to that 30-year-old that, they're not probably going to become a client yet. Someday they will. These easy, quick questions.
It also makes me feel really good. Be like, oh, hey, I know the answer to that right off the bat.
Right.
A lot of the things we start dealing with when we start getting more intricate on strategies, we've always got to double check the rules, make sure there's not changes, make sure we got it down right.
Double checking your work, you're triple checking mine.
Right. So it feels good every once in a while to get the more easy questions and be the softball questions to us that are extremely beneficial for you to know and understand. And a lot of them, a lot of the other ones that come up is on how do I structure the loan? Yeah. What kind of debt should I be paying off? It feels good to be able to get those figured out, because there's a lot of news out there. I mean, there's the Dave Ramseys out there that are all debt is bad, do not have any debt, and I don't think we partake in that entire mindset. There's good debt, there's bad debt. It mainly comes down to being intentional.
Yeah, and advice has to be super personalized for your own situation, and all these rules of thumb maybe work to start, but once you turn to the second or third page and things get more complicated, it does become justifiable to bring in a professional.
It's good steps for people who can't control their spending.
And the more complex your life becomes, you start out and you have all sorts of time because all you do is, oh, I've got a job and I'm making money and I've got extra money. What should I do? Got all sorts of time. And then
Things get complicated.
you add in a spouse, then you got kids. Next thing you know, you're getting promoted multiple times. And that thing that you had time for, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And your situation has gotten 10 times more complex. And that's where having somebody on your side, making sure you don't forget anything, who's actively reaching out to you on a regular basis, not to review your portfolio, just to say, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
What's new? What'd you do the last 3 months? What do you got planned the next 3 months? We're asking that because we care, but we're also asking that because we're trying to see if there's anything coming up that isn't on your mind that you need to talk to us about, but is something we should be game planning for.
Yeah, I talk about the 3 Ps for us, right? Be proactive, be patient, but be persistent.
Yeah.
Making sure that we're staying in front of you for your life changes.
Because you certainly don't need to come in and review with an advisor 4 times a year on their portfolio. That's
Some people don't need to meet with us. Maybe it's once every 3 years for some clients. I mean,
Yeah,
some people's life is pretty simple.
yeah. You just need that. You just need to stay in touch.
Yeah.
And just know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, for sure.
Talk about another client case, the power of simplicity here. It's another client that we met with this week. Felt really unprepared for retirement. Was scared. About $40,000 in retirement assets. $10,000-$20,000 in cash. House is paid off. Feels really poor. Doesn't quite understand his benefits. He had about a $4,700 a month pension, and when you turn that on at 65 and you include Social Security, he'll actually get a little bit of a raise in retirement, and that's money that you can't outlive. So I just kind of wanted to touch on the power of pensions, the psychology of having guaranteed income versus having to fund it yourself, and then if you are somebody who doesn't have a pension, like most people out there today, what do you have to do to put yourself in a position to have the confidence? Because if you didn't have a pension and $40,000 in retirement assets, glad your house is paid off, but
It'd still be working.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, pensions are awesome. I always like to try and equate it out to what a bucket of money, like what a pile of cash they would need in order to get that same guarantee, and just kind of give them that feel.
Right.
Because they feel so poor a lot of times, but it's a big bucket of money you need in order. I mean, $4,700 a month.
It's a lot.
$56,400 a year.
So I mean, $1.5 million.
Yeah. Around $1.5 million. We're using a 4% rule.
Yeah.
Yep, 1.41.
Yeah.
And
And you don't have any risk here.
no risk.
Well,
I mean,
being
there is some risk to pensions, obviously, how well the pension is funded, but
being
but
uh,
relatively,
fun, but
yeah.
being forced to live within those guardrails is a little bit of an advantage too, right? Being forced to live within your means, not falling into the, Dave always says if you give a spender a sports car, he'll want a bigger garage. And if you give him a bigger garage, they'll want a bigger boat. If you let them get a bigger boat, they're going to need a bigger lake. And pretty soon you feel richer than you are when you have 1.5 million in an IRA, and you feel like you can afford that new jet ski at 8% interest, and you feel like you can do these things when you can't if you're going to spend $4,700 a month. That's all you can have. Structure's not always a bad thing.
That lifestyle creep is real. I think a lot of people forget about all the side things. You go out and you buy the new boat, and you look at it and you go, I just got the payment of the new boat.
Insurance.
Well, now you have insurance. You got to buy a lift. You're going to have to have it winterized, taken out to store it every winter.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, all these extra costs add up that you didn't calculate. You just said, oh, well, it's $1,000 a month for me to buy this boat. You add in all the other stuff, and you're at $1,500.
Yeah.
So lifestyle creep is real, for sure.
And, being forced to live in that same type of structure you lived in while you were working.
Right.
Knowing how to live cheap is an asset. People don't realize that, right? People who all of a sudden get wealthy in retirement or have saved their whole life and know how to live inexpensively. I mean, that's an asset versus somebody who's always spent, who's always used credit cards and has a huge house payment and car payments. Not having debt is an asset, and knowing how to not spend money.
Sometimes it's hard to get those savers to spend.
Yeah.
And it comes down to they're content. They're happy with what they have and what they're doing. They don't feel like the urge to.
Well, and it's what they've done
on.
their entire life is spend what they need, not for frivolously.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got one more?
One more topic for today. Given what we're seeing in what's pricing for rate cuts and interest rates, and what we've seen with clients, just a little warning. I'm sure you guys have seen it too. A lot of people chasing short-term yields because they're flashy. Because a 1-year CD is paying 4.9 and I'm guessing on these rates. So 1 year at 4.9 and a 2 year at 4, right? I would probably go with the 2 year, right? Pulling out these durations on some of your fixed income products is something you should think about. I know just under 5% on a money market fund sounds great now, but if in 2 months it's 4.5%, you lost. Reinvestment risk, meaning the risk of you having to reinvest this money at a lower rate is real. And
and the conversation is coming.
Timely. Yeah.
It's right. People have gotten comfortable in cash.
And
you go.
And one of the things that people forget about this, and I've heard this comment quite a few times. Well, rates are high. I'll just keep it in cash and get my CD rates until rates go down, and then I'll put it in the market. As rates come down, and by the time rates come down to the point where you're like, I want to put it back in the market, you've just missed out on the whole benefit on the other side. Because more than likely, your stocks are going to go up relative to interest rates coming down. Mm-hmm. And at the bare minimum, your bond prices are going to go up as rates go down. Mm-hmm. And those happen pretty much simultaneously.
I mean, it's already happening. It's already happened. The 2 year went from 5 to 4, whatever it is at today. It's under 4.5. Because the market is pricing in rates going down. Markets aren't stupid. They're smarter than everybody at this table, and probably all the listeners. I would strongly say all the listeners. None of us market participants have a crystal ball, but markets have a crystal ball in a sense, where they're always predicting the future. It's just something to consider, pulling out your cash now, pulling out the duration. I mean, we're still seeing attractive rates on some 3 year, 5 year products. Mm-hmm. I know those are going to change, but
make sure you have cash for a purpose.
And just have a plan for it.
Don't have more cash than you need because rates are at 5%.
Right.
Because if rates are at 5%, then the expectation is that the equity markets are going to outperform that. That's right. You're taking on more risk to go into the equity markets. So the expectation would be that you're going to get more than 5%. So I know the conversation has always been like, well, we're getting 5% and,
I'd rather make a little than lose. How many times have you heard that?
Yes.
But and there's value to certainty, right? But
for sure,
at the same time, guaranteeing you 5% over 1 year when next year it might be 3%. That's not that's not the same as you get paid to accept volatility, right? Like,
well, and okay, I know we can't use 2020 vision. Okay, we can't always look backwards, right? It's but let's put this in perspective. Let's just have played out what happened over the last year. Everyone was going, oh, it sounds great to have 5% rates. Risk-free rate of return, I'm happy with that. What has the S&P done over the last 1 year?
I got it.
Yeah.
19.6.
So you could have got 5%, or the S&P's up 19% over the last 1 year.
You get paid to accept volatility.
Right.
I mean, it's always been that way. That's probably a rule that's going to continue.
Right.
There will be periods where fixed term investments outperform.
Of course.
But market timing.
We're long term.
Yeah,
We're long-term.
We're not timing the market. We're long term. It's okay to have a portion of your money in that, but just don't be chasing these 5% rates because they're not going to be here forever.
Right.
You can still get just under 5% on 3 or 5 year money with some products that are pretty attractive, but it's just swallowing that, locking the money up for 5 years is tough for a lot of people. So just make sure you're matching the duration of your assets with the duration of your spending, right? If you have a big expense in a year, maybe keep it in cash. But if you're not going to spend that $100,000 that you're rolling in a CD for 10 years, rolling a 1 year CD over 10 consecutive years, I doubt ever outperforms an S&P 500 or a diversified portfolio.
Right. What else we got? Is that it? You guys got anything else?
I think that's all we got this time.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next episode.
Episode 11.
Over the average.
Where we become better than average. Well, more than average.
More than average.
Yeah, not better than average.
We're already better than average.
We are the average.
We are the average right now.
Unless Mr. J. Priebe gets locked up over here.
Yeah.